Once upon a time, there was one of the most politically incorrect characters in WWE history, with an outrageous gimmick that was only possible in the madness of the Attitude Era at the end of the 90s, the one of an adult movie star. It's a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise for this final episode of this series, where we dive into the amazing story of Val Venis, wrestling's erotic actor. In the previous episode, which is not to be missed, we could see how Sean Morley became Val Venis, and all the crispy secrets behind the creation and the successful launch of his sulphurous character. How he found himself behind the bush with Jenna Jameson, the world's most famous X-actress, and how he was in a storyline where the dispicable Yamaguchi-San wanted to cut off his penis, which Val called the Big Valbowski. In this new episode, you will learn, among other things, what internal change in the WWE has deeply impacted his character, to the point of ending up having a new gimmick, the extreme opposite of an adult movie actor who was imagined to parody one of the company's real-life enemies. You will also discover the hilarious joke that his compatriot Owen Hart did to him while they were at a hotel, but also how he almost joined the legendary D-Generation X faction, and even how a tragic event in his life led him to get into the marijuana business. And you will never guess what the former diva Sunny whispered in his ear a few hours before a show, or what funny bird he had to collaborate with one day, a person he described as being one of the dumbest he had seen in his entire life. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, Val Venis, wrestling's adult movie star, episode 2, let's go! On August 3rd, 1998, the tension was high on Monday Night Raw, and poor Val Venis was in a more than complicated situation. The villain Yamaguchi-San, who wanted to avenge what the adult movie actor had done to him by lusting after his wife, was about to choppy his pee-pee, as he said. But at the moment of truth, the light goes out. What happened? What happened? Did the stallion Venus get castrated? The answer is no. Indeed, after making it look like the following week the Big Valbowski, namely his penis, had been chopped off, we will be relieved to learn that in reality, the man named John Wayne Bobbitt came to turn the light off and saved Val. And the presence of this individual in this storyline is certainly not random. This John Wayne Bobbitt guy became known by the general public because his wife, Lowena, who had enough of several years of violence, had cut his penis with a kitchen knife in the middle of the night. Subsequently, after an operation lasting almost 10 hours, John Wayne Bobbitt's pee-pee was attached to his body, and he even starred in erotic movies. About this individual, Val Venis revealed that he is one of the dumbest men he has ever met. That he was literally making non-stop penis jokes, which is still something quite ironic considering what happened to him. This storyline will end with Val Venis sprinkling water on his enemies with his new pistol. But was it really water? In any case, hang on, because from there we will witness the big explosion and then the downfall of Val Venis. And you will see that, no pun intended, that wrestling's adult movie performer will end up in a hole. After this original storyline of the pee-pee chopping, the WWE X actor has become a real star. Indeed, he told that it has already happened that he goes to a nightclub and that there is a gigantic line to ask him for an autograph, girls who gave him their phone number. Besides, he revealed that they often asked him to sign an autograph on their chest. On the other hand, he specifies that despite the diva Sunny hitting on him once by whispering in his ear that she liked bondage, he avoided relationships with his female colleagues, even if he will later claim to have had adventures with Sable and Deborah Marshall. Other elements that illustrate his success are that, for example, he starred in an episode of La Femme Nikita, which was one of the most watched shows on American television during its first 2 seasons, or that he participated in the Happy Hour show on the USA Network. Anyway, we can say that he was one of the symbols of a WWE that wasn't afraid of anything, like one of his t-shirts on which there was written, "I'm cocked, locked, ready to unload," with what seemed to be a white liquid. At that moment, the PG era seemed miles away. From the summer of 1998 to the fall of 1999, Val Venis really experienced what will remain his golden age. We can mention his European title match against D'Lo Brown at SummerSlam 1998, which particularly made an impact on him since Venis considers it one of his favorites of his career, especially because he was wrestling for the first time at Madison Square Garden. Subsequently, he will have a very symbolic storyline against Dustin Runnels, the half-brother of Cody Rhodes, who advocated a return to traditional values. True to himself, Venis will sleep with his opponent's wife while filming his new movie with her, in this case Terry Runnels, who was Dustin's wife in real life, and according to Val, they were very professional with him. It's interesting to note that in the affair that Val Venis will have with Terry on the screen, he will leave her when she announces that she is pregnant, which will turn out to be a big lie. For the record, Terry hated this storyline, which was the work of Vince Russo, and apparently she begged him to change the script, but he didn't want to know anything. Val Venis will also have the chance to form a team with The Godfather, this pimp character who was always accompanied by women, and whose association with the WWE X actor seemed natural. Val loved this partnership, even if it was far too short for his taste. And you will see that they will find themselves sometimes later in a completely different partnership. One of the other highlights of his career will take place during the road to WrestleMania 15, during which he will win his first WWE title, namely the Intercontinental Belt, which usually will bring a big push. According to Bruce Pritchard, this belt was a way to give credibility to Val Venis, who, we must admit it, didn't necessarily have the right profile to become the poster boy of the Federation. In the same period, he will be entitled to a program against former UFC fighter Ken Shamrock, whose sister, Ryan, he will hit on screen, who was actually Ken's girlfriend backstage. Val will also shoot a movie with her to put Shamrock in an intense rage, and precisely, he says that this intensity of the veteran pulled him up. It was against Shamrock that he won the Intercontinental title at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view on February 14th, 1999. A womanizer character who triumphs for the first time on the Lover's Day. Certainly no coincidence. Nevertheless, he will lose this title a month later against Road Dogg, which he really didn't appreciate, apparently because Road Dogg was coming out of rehab, while Venis himself was someone very strict morally, who considered it unfair that his opponent was rewarded instead of him. By the way, at that time, Val almost joined the famous D-Generation X faction. It was, in any case, the will of the writer Vince Russo, but the team members refused because they felt that this character was not good for DX, which may seem quite ironic when we remember their very sexualized behaviors too. All this will culminate in a fatal four-way match for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 15 between Val Venis, Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and Road Dogg, which the latter will win. Venis got along quite well with his colleagues since his Canadian friend Owen Hart, who will die shortly after, once did one of his jokes on him. Indeed, when Val Venis had just landed in St. Louis, Missouri, and they were going to the hotel to sleep for a few hours, fans came to him for autographs. There was in particular a gentleman with a pile of pictures that he wanted Val Venis to sign to then probably sell them, which the WWE X actor refused. But Owen, being smart as he was, attended the scene and had fun by calling Val in his room while he was falling asleep, pretending to be this fan. He told him he had promised to come back to sign all his photos, which Val totally denied, and which was obviously false. So Owen made his fan believe that he would attack him when he left the hotel. Venis was furious and even went to the reception looking for this guy. He then asked Owen, who was there, if he had seen someone who matched the description he was making of this fan. At that moment, he told him yes, and that he had just left the hotel a few minutes ago. So Val went outside, determined to fight him. Quite naturally, he will never find him. More seriously, in 1999, Val Venis was clearly one of the main actors of the Federation, without being at the stratospheric level of a Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course. And besides, he had a SmackDown main event against the Texas Rattlesnake in October, at the time when the Blue Show was booming. On the other hand, Venis didn't keep the best memory of Austin, given that when he went to him for advice, Stone Cold was apparently always defensive or even a little paranoid with Val Venis. But in the fall of 1999, there was a big event. Vince Russo, the one who had imagined the character of Val Venis and who had written his storylines that could arouse the interest of fans, went to WCW. And nothing would ever be the same for the Canadian again. How has this departure of Vince Russo impacted his career? In what way has his character evolved from the fall of 1999? Has he simply survived this major change in the creative team? Make sure to stay until the end of this video to find out. Once Vince Russo was no longer there to imagine worthy storylines for Val Venis, this ex-movie actor character will never be the same. So of course, we can still mention that in December 1999, 2 months after Vince Russo left, Venis will win the European title at Armageddon, which he will keep for 2 months, and that he will even be a special referee at WrestleMania 2000 for the match between Terry Runnels and the Cat. That day, he allowed himself one of his great jokes. WrestleMania comes only once a year. The Big Valbowski comes every night. In a similar register, we can also remember the day when we saw him in the toilet peeing next to the Big Show, to whom he dared to say, by seeing his apparently unimpressive penis, "And they call you the Big Show?" Apparently that day, Val really heard the fans explode with laughter in the arena after his joke. And this is the segment that he preferred in his whole career. It should be noted that in April 2000 on Raw, Venis will face the Big Showbowski, namely the parody that the Big Show had made of him, which was really hilarious. Look how well he does his mimics and how the giant lives his character. Nevertheless, there are 2 memorable things in this segment with the Big Show. The crowd reacts much less to Val Venis, but above all, what the adult movie actor says sounds much more scripted, as if he were reciting what someone had written for him, while we remember that in the past, his promos were co-creations. While he himself says that during his first years in the Federation, he was very happy with the way he was used. He ended up considering it as a simple job. But he himself doesn't consider that he had finally reached the limits of his gimmick, but that it is rather the new writers who were the problem. According to him, when Russo left, the writers were now comics fans, who were unable to write for his character. Another factor also had an important influence. Over time, the WWE became more and more family-friendly. For example, in December 1999, SmackDown moved from the TV-14 classification to PG, and in October 1999, Vince McMahon's company went public, which meant that it had to be much more careful about its image. How can you keep such a sulphurous character in such circumstances? While Val himself never rejected this gimmick and that he only asked to have new storylines, no one was behind him anymore, and everything he proposed was always refused by the writers. And finally, another crucial element had an impact on Val Venis' destiny. In 1999, WWE was targeted by the PTC, the Parents Television Council, a group that campaigned for responsible content in the media, and which criticized the Federation for having too much sexuality and violence in its shows. With the PTC doing its thing, WWE was losing sponsors that no longer wanted to be associated with the company. So in a way, keeping a very sexualized character like Val Venis meant angering the PTC, and ultimately losing money because of the advertisers who are leaving. We can say that this PTC has largely contributed to his downfall. But you will see that with the WWE, they will challenge their new enemy in a surprising way, to say the least. The summer of 2000 was coming, and Val Venis decided it was definitely time to get rid of this adult movie character almost completely. After asking Vince McMahon several times over the last few months to let him cut his hair, which required his permission, his boss had finally agreed, which was a relief for Val. For his taste, his long hair required way too much maintenance, and above all, they bothered him in the ring. Apparently, this hair change would have even been accepted thanks to Triple H in a certain way. Indeed, according to the Canadian wrestler Rene Dupree, everyone who had a haircut too similar to the cerebral assassin, Vince McMahon's stepson, was forced to change it, including Val Venis. In this big renewal for him, Val was also going to have the beautiful Trish Stratus as his manager, change his boots and trunks, become a heel, and in the ring it will be a success for him since he will be Intercontinental Champion that summer. The most memorable rivalry he will have with his new look will be against Rikishi, including a steel cage match at Fully Loaded in July. Venis also said that he enjoyed working with Rikishi. In this confrontation that he will win, we can especially remember that moment when the Samoan did a 13 feet high, very impressive splash. Personally, I find that this new version of Val Venis is nothing very special. He has become ordinary in my eyes, much less charismatic, and I even think that he needed Trish Stratus to bring him some interest. While he exuded a confidence and an unpredictable side in the past, I think that he rather looked like Trish's puppy. In September 2000, Val Venis will be kidnapped by a faction, and not just anyone, the Right to Censor, RTC. And at that moment, a bell rings in our heads. Isn't that a name that sounds similar to the PTC, the Parents Television Council? Indeed, the Right to Censor was simply a parody of the PTC, since this group wanted to cover women who were too naked in shows, censor spots that were too violent. It was a heel band that was good at getting on the nerves of the crowd, with in particular their theme song, which was a mind-numbing alarm. It was quite a response from WWE to its PTC enemy. We can say that fiction and reality were mixed up, but for Val Venis it was a total change. He went from a provocative X-actor who celebrated debauchery to a guy who wanted to make sex disappear from shows. And it should be noted that he met in this group the Godfather, the former pimp character who had now become the Good Father. For his part, Venis didn't really enjoy this new role. He thought it took him way too far from the X-actor he loved to be, and always having to wear these shirts and pants, including for wrestling, was very unpleasant, because he sweated a lot in them. He says the PTC was something Vince McMahon was worried about, since they had apparently managed to convince Coca-Cola to pull their ads from Raw. This is a faction that was going to last until the course of the year 2001, and in hindsight, Val Venis' highlight with this group will remain a match at WrestleMania 17 against Taz and the APA. He also had the opportunity to face The Undertaker in November 2000 on Raw, which was an honor for him. Even if it kept him busy for a few months, it's clearly a gimmick that didn't suit him, and we come to ask ourselves the following question: was Val Venis' career now destined to end anonymously? At the 2002 Royal Rumble, Val Venis seemed to start off on the right foot. In this Battle Royal, he went back to his adult movie actor character. Everything was like in 1998, except for one element, and not the least, his hair. And personally, I think this was an important element for the original Val Venis. But unfortunately, a few months later, the sky will fall on him. Or rather, a weight machine. While he was doing his training in a gym in Canada, the part with the weights of the machine fell literally on him. An accident probably caused by the humidity of the gym, which could have killed him. He will get away with it in the end, with his skull open and his neck completely smashed. When he returns on television, he will have another new role, the one of Chief Morty, which was the first time he used his real last name on television. He was now Eric Bischoff's right-hand man on Raw. A new role that certainly gave him exposure, but which was ultimately the one of a lackey. And he didn't appreciate it either, because when he was Chief Morley, everything the Canadian said was scripted from A to Z, which wasn't the case a few years before. Now, nothing was natural and authentic for him. You can say that after this character, Val Venis was going nowhere, and the company no longer seemed to be doing anything to try to save him from the dismissal that awaited him. Apparently, there had been talk of him being involved in a storyline in which he would have helped his colleague Shane Serrell, who would have played the illegitimate son of the legend Ric Flair. But the Nature Boy refused this angle because he considered that he could not do this to his real sons. We will also note his association with the behemoth Viscera, with whom he formed the V-Squared team for several months between 2005 and 2006. It was fun, I think, because Viscera was himself the world's largest love machine, a great gimmick of a sex addict. So their partnership was quite natural, but unfortunately it was ruined by injuries. For the record, it was against Val Venis that CM Punk had his tryout match for the WWE in May 2005. And in the very controversial scene in July 2005, during which Muhammad Hassan's men came to attack The Undertaker, imagine that the hooded man, who was authorized by the officials backstage to strangle the dead man, was none other than Val Venis. In any case, after years of wandering in the low card of the shows, without ever recreating the magic of his WWE debut, Val Venis was fired in January 2009. And it was time for him to write a new chapter in his life, the one of Kaptain Kannabis. After working in Japan, Australia during the Hulkamania tour and TNA, among other things, Sean Morley ended up retiring in 2019 after the final match in April. And what is particularly surprising is that after his history in the WWE, he has converted to a field, and not just anyone, the one of marijuana. It's a universe for which he became passionate to the point of opening his own store in Arizona in 2015. What is touching behind this passion is that everything starts from all his fellow wrestlers whom he saw dying following painkillers addictions. In particular, his big friend Andrew Martin, who he knew in WWE as Test. Sean himself experienced this hell of painkillers addiction when he had injuries, and he says that discovering the medical benefits of marijuana saved his life. He is even in contact with people who grow it at home all over the world, and he has stated that he will never be able to come back to the WWE until the Federation changes its regulations regarding marijuana. It is therefore a cause that is very close to his heart, of which he has become a real activist since he has renamed himself Kaptain Kannabis. For more than 20 years, Sean Morley has had a rather original career, from interesting experiences in Mexico and Lucha Libre to a total reconversion. Even if he himself would have liked to have a match against the veteran Ricky Steamboat in his career, we can only recognize his longevity, and his mindset has always been praised by his colleagues. It has been said of him that he has always remained positive, and that he has always tried to make everything he did the best possible. And we will end this with what the official Bruce Pritchard said about him, which summed it all up. Sean Morley will always be Val Venis, and I think most people will remember this character fondly because he was a fun character. He will always be recognized. And this is how our series about Val Venis ends, the erotic actor of wrestling. As you could see, he was still a fairly important actor in the Stamford Federation at the time when it was experiencing historical success, since he had, for example, an 8-minute match against Jeff Jarrett in the most watched Monday Night Raw of all time, with nearly 10 million viewers on May 10th, 1999. Of course, this show was mainly driven by a main event with, among others, Stone Cold, The Rock, Vince McMahon, Triple H, The Undertaker, but the Big Valbowski was a piece in this big machine. By the way, to offer you two last final stories, imagine that he has already been in the ring with Triple H precisely, and that the game had put such a brutal chair shot on his head that Val no longer knew who he was or what he was doing there for a few seconds. And one fine day, his friend Al Snow had given Val's mobile phone number on the air as part of the storyline about his dog Pepper. And for hours and hours, including until the next day, the viewers didn't stop calling Val, to a point where he even had to change his number. Although Venis has never been one of the biggest stars of the Federation, he can still boast of having made many men and women dream in his golden age, and no one will be able to take away from him that he worked with the most famous adult movie actress in the world, Jenna Jameson. The official Bruce Pritchard said about him that he had a lot of talent and that he had the potential to be a main eventer, but that this gimmick still prevented him from going higher. And precisely, I have a funny debate for you. What storylines would you have imagined for Val Venis? Come and talk about it in the comments. I'm very curious to read your ideas, and it will be great to share our opinions. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?